Go for it.
Okay. If three brothers were married to three strangers, and one of them died, and then the second performed mamar with her and also died, they require kalitza, but may not be taken in yibum. As it is stated, and one of them dies, her husband's brother shall come to her. Only a widow who is attached by one's brother's bond is subject to yibum, not a widow who is attached by two brothers' bonds. Reb Shimon says he may perform yibum with whichever one he wishes, but he must then perform kalisa with the other. If two brothers were married to two sisters, and one of them died, and then the second one's wife died, she is forbidden to him forever because she was once forbidden to him. Two men who betrothed two women, but when they entered the bridal canopy, they confused one with the other. They are obligated to bring a sin offering because of adultery. If they were brothers because of the prohibition against a brother's wife, if they were sisters because of the prohibitions against a wife's sister, if they were menstruants because of the prohibition against a menstruant, we separate them for 3 months in case they are pregnant. But if they were minors and capable of childbirth, we restore them immediately. If they were daughters of Kohanim, they are disqualified from eating truma. So even though they confused one with the other, it was b'shogeg.
Yeah, that's right. The shogeg.
But they're still obligated.
So that's when you bring a chatas, is when it's a shogeg.
Right.
If it's mazid, then he gets tares.
Right. But so he's still obligated to do this offering. Okay.
Well, that's dafka when you do a chatas, is when Aveir was b'shogeg. If a person
right.
Aveir b'mazid, then he doesn't bring a chatas.
Right. Yes, karas. Right. Okay. All right. If someone performed kalitza with his yuvama, and then she was found to be pregnant and she gave birth, if the child is capable of living, he's permitted to marry her relatives. And she is permitted to marry his relatives, and he has not disqualified her from the priesthood. If the child is not capable of living, he is forbidden to marry her relatives, and she is forbidden to marry his. And he has disqualified her from the priesthood.
Okay. All right, so now we have the converse case in Mishna Base. Is instead of doing chalitza, he did yibum.
Mm-hmm.
So the brother does yibum on the widow, v'nimtzeis mu'beres, and it turns out that she's actually pregnant, and she gives birth. Okay, so now you have a problem because now he's been living with his brother's wife, shelo b'makom mitzvah. Okay, bizman she'avlat shel kayama, if the child is viable, yotzi. Now, what does yotzi mean? He doesn't even need to give her a get. She just goes out, because if it's an ereva to him, she's ascertained by an ereva as his brother's wife, and therefore he walks away without a get. Okay. So the chayvin b'korban, and both of them have to bring a korban chatas for having had relations with each other. The im ein havalad shel kayama, however, if the fetus is not viable, then he may carry on being married to her, because then it turns out retroactively that the yibum was a valid yibum, because even though she was pregnant, the pregnancy failed, and the husband, her late husband, was left without children. Tachlis. Okay. Safek ben tishel rishon, safek ben shiva la'achron. Now, what happens if they've been living together for a month or so, and she turns up pregnant, and we're now not sure whether she's pregnant from the first brother or the second brother.
Right.
Okay. So now, because we're in a safek situation, and this is potentially an erva, if the child is from the first brother, it's potentially an erva, then he has to give her a divorce. But this time he actually has to give her a get, because it's a safek, because she might actually be his valid wife, and therefore he has to give her a get to make sure that she really is allowed to remarry. And now, what's the status of the child? Is it possible that the child is a mamzer?
Yeah.
Well, you tell me. Think about it before you look at the answer, and tell me why you would answer what you answer. There are two possibilities here.
One, the child is okay, is legitimate, it's a real,
No. Not the circumstances. We'll work out the halacha based on whose child it is. So on the side that the child belongs to the first brother,
right?
Is the child kosher?
Child kosher. Well, it was in the time period that she was with that husband, obviously.
She was married to the first brother. So
Right. So she'll be okay.
And the child is fine. It's not a mamzer.
Right.
Now, what happens if the child belongs to the second brother?
Then he is a mamzer. Then in that case.
Well, why? Because if it belongs to the second child, to the second brother, then the first brother died childless, and it's a valid yibum.
That was the right thing, right.
So in either case, so this is called mimai nafshach. In either case, the child is going to be kosher. Right. Either it's the first brother's child or the second brother's child, but it's a kosher child. There's no mamzeris here at all. Okay.
I want to ask you, if he, in the first case, in the beginning of the Mishnah, he said that she goes out without a get.
Yes.
Right. Does that mean that she can't marry anyone else because she doesn't have a get?
No, that's the point, is that she doesn't need a get. She's just a widow with a child.
Okay. All right. So that hit me when you said she went out without a get, because we always know that a woman needs a get, but she's a widow. She's not divorced. So. Right. Okay. All right.
Okay. Right, because the second marriage was completely non-binding. There was nothing. It was nothing happened there. Okay. Granted, she's not going to be allowed to marry a kohen because she's been living with an erva. Once a woman's had relations with somebody that she's not allowed to have relations with, who's an erva to her, then she's possible to the kohen for sure. Okay. And now, in terms of the korban that they chayev, because now the surviving brother and the wife, we're not sure if this child is his or not. So it's possible that they've been living together perfectly legitimately, and it's possible that they've been living together be'erva. So when you have a situation when you've got a safek whether a person was over on an avon kares, the korban that you bring is an asham taloi. It's called an asham taloi. You're not sure, did you do it, didn't you do it? And it's a different korban than a chatas. It's a male, and it's other than that, it's actually pretty similar, and it's got a minimum value of two shkalim, I think, 2 stela. Okay. Then, shomeres yavam, Mishna Gimel. So shomeres yavam, that's the technical term that we give to a woman who is waiting for yibum. Okay, she's a shomeres yavam. Shenaflu la nechasim. So now let's say she is waiting. So her husband has died. She's waiting for yibum from one of the surviving brothers, and now let's say she doesn't have any brothers herself, and her father dies. So now she's inherited something from her father's estate. So now she's got property. It belongs to her. Now, if she was still married, then her husband would naturally, have the rights over her property, because what happens when a woman enters into a marriage is that her property that she owns becomes nichsei melug, which is, so remember there are different types of property that a woman gets brings into a marriage. So there's some things that are nichsei melug, what belongs to her. The husband has rights to use, but he also but he only gets the fruits. He's not. So if she has a field, then he's allowed to. Whatever the field produces, he's allowed to farm the field, and he's allowed to produce from the field, and he gets. But if he subsequently divorces her, then he has he gives them back. But the fruits are all his, and he's not. Wait, hang on a second. He gets and if he improves it, then the shvach is his. The son barzel. Wait, hang on. Let me just make sure I'm getting this right. The nichsei melug. So that's what. So those things are not specifically listed in the kesubah. And he's not responsible for them, right? He does all he gets out. He doesn't have any rights over them except the Paris, and he doesn't take responsibility. So if anything got destroyed or whatever while he was using it, it's not his problem, it's her problem. Then there's Tzon Barzel. So these are things that the woman actually gives over to her husband as part of the Nadunya, and it's listed in the Kesubah. Okay, and these are things that the husband is allowed to do with as he pleases. Okay, so if he improves it, then the profit is his, and he's also chayav in the responsibility of it. So if he causes damage and to the field, and subsequently the marriage dissolves, then he has to repay his wife for any damages. So he's chayav on the achrayos. So he gets the gain, he also takes the losses. Okay, so that's called the nichsei tzon barzel. And of course, the third thing that's a property inside the Kesubah, which we're going to see inside the Mishnah later on. Another thing that happens is the Kesubah itself, which is typically 200 zuz. That is something which, of course, the husband is required to pay to the wife on dissolution of the marriage, unless the wife predeceases him, in which case the husband keeps the Kesubah. Okay, so now.
Did we have a Mishnah, or is there in this that the husband dies, so she should be Yevamos with one of the brothers? Is there a thing that says, the oldest brother has the first chance and the second one has the next?
We did that. We actually read that Mishnah.
Yeah, right.
That's right. The proper thing to do is that the eldest brother, the eldest surviving brother, should be the one to do the yibum or the chalitza. But if a younger brother jumps ahead of him, no, it's okay.
He doesn't have to ask permission or anything.
That's the proper thing. There's a Mishnah that says the proper thing is for the eldest brother to do it, but it can go down the line, not a problem. Okay, and it goes first. The first dibs is for any of the brothers who want to do yibum. So the eldest brother should have the first chance to do the yibum, and if he says no, then they go down the line until everyone says no, we don't want to do yibum, and then the eldest one should do chalitza. And if he refuses to do the chalitza, then again you go down the line to.
Oh, we had that. That's what I remember. I thought we. Okay. All right. Good.
Okay. So back to our Mishnah Gimel, the Shomeres Yavam. So while she's Shomeres Yavam, she has just inherited from her father. Modim Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel, we have a case of agreement between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Shemocheres v'nasenes v'kayam, that she has that the property over here, none of the Yevamim, the surviving brothers, has the right to tell her that she has to what she can do with her inheritance, because they're not properly married to her yet. There's a zika, there's a connection to them for yibum, but none of them is actually married to her, so they can't tell her what she can and can't do with her property. She can sell, buy whatever she wants, and she can give it as a gift, and that's valid. Now, if however she had inherited it while she was married, then her husband would have the rights over the property. So then she wouldn't be allowed to buy or sell. So now, what happens if in the state of being a Shomeres Yavam, she inherits, so she's got inherited property, she's got a kesubah due to her from the late husband, and she dies. And so what do you do with the kesubah and with the nechasim that she has, the nichsei melug and the nichsei tzon barzel? Okay. Beis Shammai omrim yachloku yorshei habal and yorshei ha'av. Well, because there are two sets of yorshim who are competing for her property. Right. She doesn't have any children from this husband naturally, because this is a situation where the husband died without property, without children. Okay, so now who are her yorshim? Well, the husband's her father will say, listen, I'm her yoresh, and her brothers will say, we're your, if the father's no longer around, then the brothers will say, listen, we're yoreshim, and we want the property. And even if she has a child from a previous marriage, then the child could say, I'm a yoresh, I should be getting the stuff from my mother. But the brothers of the husband will say, hold on a second, we were about to do yibum with her. One of them will say, I was about to do yibum with her, she had a connection to me. She wasn't allowed to marry anyone else. I've got the rights over this, over all this property over here. So here comes this argument. They'll come to Beis Din, and Beis Shammai says, let them split it. Okay. Beis Hillel omrim nechasim b'chezkasan. It says Beis Hillel, that's not so. You've got a certain chazaka of where the property is. Kesuba b'chezkas yoshei habal. Who's got the money for the kesuba? Right now, it's in the money is sitting in the hands of the husband, right? Since he died, right? If he had died without if he had died with children, then he would have had to pay out a kesuba to the wife. Okay, but since he died without children, and there's still the possibility of yibum, one of the brothers could have married her and not had to pay out any kesuba. So therefore, you can't extract the money. So you see again, the chazaka is basically on the principle that hamotzi mechaver alav harai. If the burden of proof is on the claimant. So you, in order to take money away from them, you got to come with a strong proof, and the money is currently in the chazaka of the husband and his yorshim, so they don't have to pay out any kesuba. Okay. On the other hand, the nechasim, the property that she brought into the marriage, and the property that whether she brought it into the marriage before or it was something that fell to her after the husband died. The chazaka is in the yorshe of the Baal, is the yorshe of the Av. They're still in her family property, because on dissolution of the marriage, the property still belongs to the wife's family,
right?
To their yorshim. So that property stays on the wife's side. So that property stays on the wife's side of the family.
Yeah, so it's in the possession of the father's heir.
So basically, the wife's yorshim get the property, and the husband's yorshim don't have to pay out a kesuba. Okay. Mishna Daled Kanasa. What happens if one of the brothers has married her? 100%. She's his wife in every shape, manner, and form. However, the big difference between a yibum marriage and a regular marriage is that her kesuba is still from her first husband.
In the case of yibum?
In the case of yibum. In the case of yibum, she keeps her original kesuba. And what does that mean? Practically speaking, is that if Reuven, the first husband, had a small piece of land, and that's the security for her kesuba, and it's not such a great piece of land, and now Shimon, the younger brother, does yibum with her, and Shimon's a bit of a gvir, and he's got lots of property and whatever. She doesn't. Her kesuba is only on the original property that Reuven owned. Now Shimon inherits that property because he's doing yibum with the wife.
But she can't do anything with it.
But her claim is only on that land. She has no lien on the rest of Shimon's land.
She can't do anything on the second one.
But the kesuba only has a lien on it, whatever belongs to Reuven, not on Shimon. Okay, then we move over to Yevamos, Aleph base.
How do they release their co-wives? If a man's daughter and any one of her forbidden relations was married to his brother, and he had another wife as well, and he died, just as his daughter is released, so too is her co-wife. If this daughter's co-wife went and married his second brother, and he also had another wife, and then he died, just as his daughter's co-wife is released, so too is her co-wife's co-wife, even if there are 100. How is it that if they died, their co-wives are permitted? If a man's daughter, any one of those forbidden relatives, was married to his brother, and he also had another wife, and his daughter died or was divorced, and then his brother died, her co-wife is permitted. Anyone who was able to refuse but did not do so, her co-wife requires kalitza, but is prohibited from yibum. 6 forbidden relations are more stringent than these, for they are married to others. Their co-wives are permitted: his mother, father's wife, father's sister, paternal sister, father's brother's wife, and paternal brother's wife. Beit Shammai permit the co-wives to the brothers, but Beis Hillel forbid them. If they perform chalitza, Beis Shammai disqualifies them from marrying into the priesthood, but Beis Hillel qualifies them. If they were taken in Yibum, Beis Shammai qualifies them, but Beis Hillel disqualifies them. Even though these prohibited and these permitted, these disqualified and these qualified, Beis Shammai did not refrain from marrying women of Beis Hillel, nor Beis Hillel or Beis Shammai. Despite all the things that these judge Tahor and that these judge Tameh, they did not refrain from using each other's utensils for purposes of Tahara.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, Tanis, Gimel Tes.
If they had been fasting and rain began to fall before sunrise, and they need not complete the fast. If the rain began to fall after sunrise, they must complete the fast. If Eliezer says, if it began to rain before midday, they need not complete the fast, but if the rain began after midway, they must complete the fast. It once happened that a fast was decreed in Lod, and rain fell before midday. Rav Tarfon said to them, go out, eat and drink, and proclaim a holiday. Then they then went out, ate, drank, and proclaimed the holiday, and in the afternoon returned to the synagogue and recited the great holiday. On three junctures of the year, the Kohanim raised their hands to bless the people 4 times during the day at Shacharis, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah. On fast days, on Mamamados, and on Yom Kippur. Okay.
One more.
These are the Mamamados, since the Torah states, command the children of Israel and say to them, my sacrifice, my bread. Now, how can a person's sacrifice be offered when he is not present? The early Nevi'im instituted 24 mismaros, corresponding to every single mismar, and there was a mamad in Jerusalem of Kohanim, Nevi'im, and Yisraelim. When the time approached for the mismar is to ascend, the Kohanim and the Levites would ascend to Yerushalayim, and the Yisraelim assigned to that mismar would assemble in their cities and read from the story of creation.
Okay. All right, Psachim Yud Tes.
Yud Tes. One may not conclude the feast after eating the Pesach with dessert. Some fell asleep. If some fell asleep, they may eat. If all, they all may not eat. If Yossi says they dozed, Yossi says if they dozed, they may eat. If they fell into a deep sleep, they may not eat. The Pesach offering contaminated one's hands. After midnight, pickle and leftover sacrifice will contaminate the hands. If he recited the blessing for the Pesach offering, he exempts the blessing of the Chagiga offering. But if he recited that of Chagiga offering, he does not exempt that of the Pesach offering. These are the words of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva says, this one does not exempt that one, nor does that one exempt this one.
Adron Alach, Maseches Psachim, and one from Shekalim.
From Shkalim?
Shekalim, yeah.
I didn't think you didn't tell me that yesterday. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. First of Adar, they proclaim about the payment of the Shkalim and about Kalayim. On the 15th of Adar, they read the Megillah in the walled cities. They commence to repair the roads, the town squares, and the accumulations of water. They attend to all the public needs, and they mark the graves, and they also go out and inspect the field for Kalayim.
All right.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Sorry. Okay. Shavias. Shavias. Here we go. Base Gimel. One may clear away the stones until Rosh Hashanah. One may clip, prune, and remove the redundants until Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yeshua says what applies to pruning and removing the redundants in the 5th year applies also in the 6th year. Rabbi Shimon says, so long as I am permitted to tend the tree, I am permitted to move the redundants. One may besmear saplings, wrap them round, trim them, make shelters for them, and water them until Rosh Hashanah. But Elazar Basadik says, even in the 7th year, one may water the branches, but not the roots. One may oil unripe figs and pierce them until Rosh Hashanah, and unripe figs of the 6th year, which have gone into the 7th year, and of the 7th year, which have gone into the 8th year, they neither be oiled or pierced. The Behuda says, where the custom is to oil them, we may not oil them because it ranks as work. Where it is not customary to oil them, when we may oil them. And Reb Shimon permits concerning a tree because one may tend a tree. My garden looks terrible. You know, is your garden okay?
We had some gardeners come in a couple of days ago to clean the place up.
Yeah, this really has to be. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay. We have hay.
Yeah.
A chair whose slats did not protrude and they were removed is tummy because it is usual to turn it on its side and sit on it. A chair whose center slat was removed and the outer ones remain is tummy. The outer slats were removed and the center slat remains, it's tummy. Reb Shimon says if it was 1/100th wide, if it was 100 wide, okay. Regarding a chair whose two adjacent slats were removed, Rabbi Akiva rules the tummy, but the sages drew the tahor. Rabbi Yehuda said even a bridal chair whose panels were removed and a receptacle remained, it is tahor. Since the primary function is disabled and the secondary function is also disabled.
Yeah. And Marcos.
Okay, base head. Similarly, a murderer who went into exile in his city of refuge and the people of the city wished to honor him, he should say to them, I am a murderer. If they said to him, even so, he may accept the honor from them as it is said, and this is the matter of the murderer. They would pay rent to the Levites. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Meir says they would not pay them rent. He returns to the office he had previously occupied. These are the words of Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Yehuda says he would not return to the office he had previously occupied. These are the ones who incur the penalty of lashes. The penalty of one who cohabitates with his sister, his father's sister, his mother's sister, his wife's sister, his brother's wife, his father's brother, or with a menstruant, a woman to a Kohen Gadol, and a divorcee and a kalutza to an ordinary Kohen. A mamzeres to a Nisanite or to a Yisrael, to Yisraelis, or to a Nisanite to a mamzer. From a widow or divorcee, one is liable for 2 negative commandments for a divorcee, and as kalutza, he is liable for but 1 negative commandment.
Right, because the chalutza is a derabanan.
A person who is tameh, who eats holy foods, one who enters the temple on tameh, while tameh, one who eats fats, blood, leftover sacrificial meat, pickle or sacrificial foods which have become tameh, and crawling things. And so I missed one. And one who slaughters a sacrificial animal or offers it up outside the temple, one who eats chametz on Pesach, one who eats or performs work on Yom Kippur, one who compounds anointing oil, compounds incense or anoints with the anointing oil, one who eats nevelis, trephis, abominable creatures, and crawling things. One who eats tevel or maisa rishon, from which truma was not separated, or maisa sheni, or consecrated objects which were not redeemed. How much money eat of tevel to be liable? Reb Shimon says any amount. The Chachamim, however, say the bulk of an olive. Said Reb Shimon to them, do you not concur with me concerning one who eats an ant of any size that he is liable? They replied, because it was created, he replied, 1 wheat kernel, 2, as it is as it was created. Okay. Where'd you find your gardens? There's people you use all the time, or?